Hello, hi everyone. It's me, your friend Bryant Francis. It's me, contributing editor Bryant
Mario.
Francis. I can't believe I just did that. We are live. Thank you for joining us today. I am joined today by I am the small face down here in the middle of the screen, and I'm joined by two larger faces up top, Chris and Alex. Chris and Alex, if you could please introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Chris Graft, editor-in-chief of Gamasutra.
Thanks, Chris. I'm Alex Waro, another editor of Gamasutra. I've got a new mic, so please forgive me if I sound a little breathy.
You sound a little better,
It
is what
sounds
I'm hearing.
amazing. It
Do I
sounds
sound a
really
little
good.
We don't have
damp?
any sponsors for this show yet, but Alex got himself a new mic from a certain company. I think it's Green Sasquatch. Um,
It's got
Uh,
six teraflops
six
of power in
teraflops
that
of
thing.
power.
that's right. This mic does 4K.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't. Nicholas is asking if we can move that plant slightly in my window. I don't know what he's talking about. I don't have a
No, leave
plant.
it. Leave it. It's
There's
a
no
good plan.
plant.
Don't move
Um,
the plants.
Anyway, welcome everyone. Thank you all for joining us. It's early for those of us here on the West Coast, but it's not early if you're on the East Coast. But we are here earlier than usual with one of two streams we're having today to talk about Microsoft's Project Scorpio, which is an upcoming successor to the Xbox One that's still in the same console generation as the Xbox One. Our own Alex Waro here was the one who went up to Redmond to learn all these details. So, hi, Alex.
Hi, Brian.
What is your first thought? Like, we've got two articles up right now. We've got these Q and A's. We've got like all this. You're going to be pull quoting these interviews for the next few days. What's your first thought about Project Scorpio from everything you've taken away with, and what do you think is the first thing game developers should know as the future approaches rapidly?
The first thing everyone should know is that they won't tell us what the name of the console is or the price, and that was very surprising when we flew up to the headquarters because I don't know, for some reason I thought that would be out there by now, but it's not. But we asked a lot, and I'm sorry we can't tell you.
Well, what do you think is relevant about that? Like, why? I mean, like, we're obviously a developer-focused site, so in theory, we don't need like how much it costs. I mean, like, it's relevant to devs to some extent, but like, why do you think it matters that Microsoft is still not revealing these two bits of information, but they will tell us how many teraflops are in the thing?
I think it matters for a few reasons, right? Like, first of all, they are very clearly being very careful about how they message this console, and
Mm-hmm.
we got wrapped up in that because they invited us up there, and we thought it would be a good opportunity for us to ask some questions.
Mm-hmm.
But this is very much like them trying to make a show of outreach to game developers after they already, sort of like dropped some of the tech specs last week with Eurogamer. More importantly, the price dictates how like in part dictates how this console will perform, and that dictates the audience base that developers will have to target.
Mm-hmm.
And as we get into this weird position at the end of 2017 where there are two like significantly different PlayStations and two significantly different Xboxes in the market, in addition to PCs and Switches and everything else, it gets weirder and weirder for developers to have to like consider which platforms they're going to target and how they're going to scale their engines across them. So I think that's a significant detail that we don't have, unfortunately. But we have a lot of great details.
You can kind of see from the lead that we have today, just giving a rundown of the developer relevant details. You can see that Microsoft they're trying to ensure developers that there's not going to have to be a significant amount of work to put in to make it Scorpio compatible, right? If they're already making Xbox One games, they're
right.
like Microsoft is saying that, hey, like it's pretty much it's very similar, right?
Going to the chat real quick. I'm sorry, my monitors actually really have it. Loops 73 is positing that 499 might be a reasonable price.
Yeah.
And Lars Duquette has shown up in the chat. So hi, Lars.
Hi,
Thanks for
Lars.
joining us. If you've got, if you're, by the way, just as a quick general reminder for how we do things on Gamasutra. If you have anything to say, if you're a game developer, even if you're just an interested game developer, we'd love to hear what you have to say. So join us in chat. The first comment from chat that I'm going to bring for you, Alex, is someone is asking why we uploaded these photos in low resolution so people can't see these details.
We have a one of a kind website, and we just those are just the images that we have in the way that we can display them. I was provided with some images. I was strictly tried to take pictures multiple times while I was there, and they were like, "No, you can't. Stop. Put that away. Put your phone away. We can't do that." But we'll send you something, and they did. If people really want to like zoom way in on those images, today I'll work on getting some bigger zoomable images into the story. But you can kind of see it down here in the corner somewhere. That is a render of what the dev kit looks like. And you can get most of the details there. There's there's a screen on the front. There's some buttons. There's a bunch of there's a power brick.
So Alex, there's a lot of important developer things to ask as we go on through the hour. But at first, I do want to ask, what was you constantly talked about how you were surrounded by 4 Xbox executives at all time.
Yeah.
What was the vibe you got from the people who were working on this as they paraded you from interview to interview?
Yeah. All right. So Microsoft reached out to us after GDC and said, "Hey, do you want to come up and talk about Scorpio and what it means for developers?" And we said, "Yes. Can we pay our own way?" And they said yes, and we flew up there. I thought, because I didn't read the email closely enough, that it was going to be a group situation, which is what it was when we went to Sony to talk about the PS4 Pro with Mark Cerny. We were not the only press there. Microsoft, it was just me, and I was surrounded at all times by at least 4 people. Some Xbox executives and some PR people, and it was awkward. I couldn't even go to the men's room without having somebody have to show me where it is, and then either go in with me and awkwardly make small talk, or awkwardly stand outside because they didn't want me to wander off.
Oh my god.
But I should say, inside Microsoft, everyone is real nice to visitors, and everyone seems really bought in on the idea of a mid-console refresh, and on Xbox, on Xbox as an enduring thing, not as the console business didn't seem like it was going to go anywhere. People seemed upbeat, energetic, and they seemed like they really believed in what they were saying. That may be because they were well prepared for a member of the press to come by and talk to them. But it was convincing. It was a show of strength inside that company that came off as pretty natural.
Yeah, if you're working on something for that long and you've committed that much resources to it, I would. I don't know. It's interesting though, because I don't think that any of us are sold on anything until we actually see it. Just the idea. I mean, this goes for PlayStation 4 Pro also, and the idea of a mid-console refresh. I think it's interesting how Microsoft is approaching it, and I have seen game developers on Twitter react to our story. In a way where it's it sounds like Microsoft has been listening to developers, and I read some of the commentary from some of the people you talk to, and it does sound like they looked at the experiences that they've had with Xbox One. They've talked to game developers. There's a bit about the memory that they listen to developers about and switch things around. So it's interesting to see Microsoft be this. I think this is probably the most open that any company has been about upcoming hardware. And I start
certainly.
Yeah. And I start thinking about the way that it's almost analogous to, but not quite, but to open software development. And you can kind of hear. You can see how the feedback came in and how they iterated, how they're iterating on the Scorpio, on the dev kit, and certainly in the piece of consumer hardware. So yeah, did you get that impression that a lot of they gathered a bunch of feedback up from game developers and into the Scorpio?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to tell that was strongly emphasized to me while I was there for the day, and it's hard to tell how much of that is because it's a novel thing for them, which I don't actually think it is, and how much of it is because I specifically asked, like, okay, how did developers shape this? And they very much wanted to jive with that message for Gamasutra, so they gave us a bunch of anecdotes, and there's more. I'll try to write up more throughout the day and the rest of the week. I want to really quick. I'm sure you've seen this, Brian. Lars is in chat asking about like what this means for the future of console generations. This idea that we now have like a more soft transition between one Xbox to the next. That was something we talked about a lot while I was there, and you can read it on the website. There's in the lead, there's some talk about that, and in the Phil Spencer interview, there's a lot of talk about that. Basically, it's very, I don't want to say contradictory because that's a little bit too strong, but like it's very strange how Spencer and the rest of them will talk about how they really look to PC for like learnings about where the game industry is going and like where people are playing games and like what they should be doing, but they also just don't want to give up on a console. Like the idea that like this that there's the dedicated box under your TV in your living room that plays games, even though it does everything else too, but it's mostly just there for games, even though they advertise movies and TV on there and like make it hard to find games on there. But no, really, it's just there for games. They don't want to give up on that, and they don't want to give up on saying that there will be another generation of Xbox. So if you read the interview, like Spencer says that they've already begun to consider like what they're going to do for the next hardware revision. That may very well be a much more significant box than Scorpio is to the original Xbox One. But back compat, which Lars also asked about, that's something that Spencer appears very passionate about, and he didn't say what the plans were for their idea to have back compatible games forward throughout time, or rather to have old games be forward compatible, as Brendan Sheffield would prefer I say. But like he does seem very passionate about decoupling a lot of what is Xbox and moving it off onto different platforms. So Xbox on PC, Xbox on mobile, Xbox on different generations of Xbox hardware. So it is not at all inconceivable that they would have another full generation break, but then they would maintain backwards compatibility. That seems well in line with what they are saying right now. So
it's interesting. Like it's really hard to tell where it goes beyond Scorpio, because right now I get the impression that it'll just they don't want to reset the entire console generation like they've done in the past. It's almost like whatever comes after Scorpio, like at some point, will there be older games that just aren't compatible, like when you update your phone? But this is kind of confusing to me because Phil Spencer was telling you that he admires how PC games you're able to like play Age of Empires, on your brand new PC, and that game has been around for such a long time, and he'd like to see that emulated in consoles. What do you think? Did you get any? Did you get any other feedback about how what a new generation of hardware after Scorpio would even look like?
No, they were super cagey about that. Like I asked a couple times, and they were very they were clearly told not to talk about that and had no interest in talking about it. The most I get out of Spencer was like, you may not believe me, but we really are working on another set of hardware. Like we have to consider years in advance what we're gonna do. Like what you said about Scorpio. Like if you read the interview with Spencer, he says like shortly after he became head of Xbox, which I think was in 2014, that was when the plans for Scorpio were put in motion. And so they were betting as early as 3 years ago on what they were going to do at the end of this year. So I don't think it's inconceivable, like if they're already thinking about the next generation of Xbox, that there will be new hardware, within 3 years or something. I don't know, but we'll have to see. I mean, maybe not. Maybe it's farther out.
So something interesting to take away from the reporting that we actually have on hand, because I actually think it's very difficult. As someone's pointing out in the chat a couple years ago, the death of consoles was a frequent headline that we saw on a few sites floating around the internet. But I think the most salient takeaway for trying to predict the future of Xbox or other consoles from this reporting is that comment about how they were starting to conceive of Scorpio and test Scorpio in 2014. Because this was announced last year in 2016. So 2 years before this was officially known to the world, although there was that early reporting that both Xbox and the PS4 Pros, these were both leaked to the public in advance. that before, without even conceiving of hardware, Microsoft began using some of its internal software to improve performance for games, and to take some of their popular games on their consoles and improve them, and like try to improve their performance before like any physical hardware was conceived. And it's interesting to me that they were able to like sort of make the dream of the Scorpio happen without getting that much hardware together. Am I accurately reading that right from what they were talking about? I might have also been pulling that from some of Digital Foundry's reporting that I was reading. Like that's how they got this started. That might have been from Digital Foundry.
Maybe. Like, so how do you mean exactly?
Apparently, they were using like some of their software optimization tools and trying to improve the performance of a game. I'm literally just like quoting what I remember from like what I just said 2 seconds ago. Apparently, they were like Scorpio wasn't just some. From the start, Scorpio wasn't just just an idea that they had to wait for tech to test. They were able to start thinking about what it would mean in the marketplace to have a console that ran games better and ran 4K. Like this. So right now, I mean, my point is being right now. I'm sure Microsoft is trying to sort of think about. Like, I'm sure if they're hopefully have this open line with developers, they're trying to figure out if another generation hard reset is needed, or if they can do another advance, like if Scorpio becomes the Xbox One, as to right now the Xbox One is the Scorpio, is sort of my take. Is that right now I'm sure Microsoft must be like thinking about and trying to figure out how they can make similar tests happen.
Yeah, I'm not totally sure what the question is, but like there's a lot there. Like I want to be super clear as we continue to discuss this. I don't know what Microsoft's plan for the future of console hardware is. Mm-hmm. I don't even know that they necessarily know super well. I think right now a lot of people there are focused on Scorpio, and going forward, like I think what they do with the next Xbox, if there is a next Xbox, will depend heavily on like how the Xbox market shakes out in the wake of Scorpio in 2017, 2018.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I have the quote it's from Digital Foundry. Games creators have to work to the characteristics of the console platform, but because Scorpio's design brief was to scale existing titles to 4K, the hardware team could provide actual shipping games and customize the design to fit common characteristics. Pix, which is their performance tool, provided the data that was then fed into the hardware emulator, where the Microsoft team could then see how those titles would run on prospective Scorpio hardware.
Right.
What I got from that was before there was any hardware for Scorpio, there was like a process that I'm sure is going on right now.
Okay, all right. So back up. So if what I'm hearing is you're suggesting that the emulators they built for Scorpio prior to actually having dev kits and early hardware is happening now at Microsoft. I don't know anything about that. Like I don't know that's the case. I think a big reason that was able to happen with Scorpio, and like we talked about this, I didn't put a lot of it in our story because like it was pushing 3,000 words, and we mostly on the dev kit. But like so Microsoft has this Pix capture and performance evaluation tool that they use. They recently made it available on Windows, and that is because they are spreading onto Windows in a more defined way. The same way like Forza is now on Windows and Gears of War is on Windows. Like that is part of their overall stretch back onto Windows with the Xbox brand. But they were able to use emulators to sort of like that would roughly emulate final Scorpio hardware, a long time in advance, because Scorpio is built around the basic architecture of Xbox One. Like it's not the exact same. I don't know enough to know the differences. It runs on the Scorpio engine, but it is effectively a souped up Xbox One. Like if you read the article, it's just it's a better CPU, a bunch more memory, a bunch of other things. So they were able to emulate that far in advance. If they change things significantly, I don't know that we can assume there will be that kind of emulation in that far forward.
Right, okay, so I could be wrong about that. Right.
The way that process worked is really interesting because, like, it's the way they talk about it at Microsoft. It's like it's revolutionary in part because they're talking to a member of the press and they want it to sound good. I'm sure, but also like at the same time, it's paradoxically like outdated because what they were saying basically is like they're using all these performance capture tools on their existing games, like on their first part, like the Coalition or whatever is using like Pix and stuff to iron out Gears of War 4, and then when they know they're going to put Gears of War 4 on the PC and they know they're going to put it on Scorpio, they're running it through the Scorpio emulator, long before they have actual hardware. and seeing how it will run, with the new hardware and stuff, and run at 4K. But like basically what they're doing is making sure that their console game can run at 4K, right? Like can run at 4K 60 on this new hardware. Developers on PC for at least a year now, if not longer, have been in some cases like already testing to see if their games can run at 4K 60. Like this is not new. It's new for Microsoft, but it's not like if you talk to anyone outside of Microsoft, it's like of course.
Right.
We keep on talking about PC, but we haven't really talked about what Phil Spencer has been saying. It seems like Microsoft and also his vision of what Scorpio is trying to very, very carefully toe the line between what a console and PC is. And it's a really tricky thing, like for a bunch of reasons. One of them is like Microsoft. They're talking about basically making a standardized gaming PC for your television. That's almost what it sounds like. At the same time, they have like Windows gaming as well. So those things like from a business standpoint seem like almost at odds. What else did you pick up like from talking to Phil Spencer about his take on making the Scorpio more like a PC? Like what does he mean by that?
Phil Spencer loves the PC. He's a man who loves PCs. He loves PC.
Who doesn't?
He loves Age of Empires 2. He mentioned that game at least 3 times.
Such a good game.
40 minutes. And he believes everyone should go back and play it, apparently, which is what you can read in our article. Like he waxes about it. He also loves Xbox. It's his job. He's the man on the stage. He loves it. So he doesn't want either one to go away or to win, but he does want. I think the way he put it to me was they want to like take some of their learnings and some of their power as Microsoft on the PC and like apply that to Xbox. Which seems like a little bit, late to the party. But like basically, what he's saying is, the Xbox won't go away. Like it is. You're right. This is effectively like very akin to the evolution of a PC, in that Scorpio is now like the recommended spec, and Xbox One is kind of like the min spec on Steam. But when I pushed him on whether like, wouldn't it make sense if we just got rid of the console entirely and we just had Xbox as a brand on PCs, and we had under the TV PCs, standardized PCs? And he was like, well, no, because we think Xbox is valuable because developers can build exactly to that hardware. Like they know exactly what's going to be in that box and exactly how it runs. And so they can actually get a little bit more performance out of it than if they had to build to a bunch of different specs on PC. So
I mean, that sounds like a dodge of the actual question. You could do what you just described without making a billion different like Xbox brand. Like it's not just Xbox Live and then like a bunch of Steam machines, for instance, like just for the closest reference. Like I was thinking that based on what I'm hearing is that there's a future where Xbox sort of metamorphosizes like a caterpillar into a butterfly of something like that's still not out of the realm of possibility. From based on what you saw, like that it becomes more than just like one fixed console. It becomes like this. Well, sorry, I'm just repeating myself.
No, you're right. It's hard to talk about because like basically we have to switch between two realities, right? Which is like the reality that we all live in, and then there's the Xbox reality, which is in Xbox reality. Xbox should exist, right? Xbox is a console, and there is a value there because there's an audience for that console, and there are studios that make games for that console. The rest of us out here are like, well, the inside of that console is just a PC. Like just like the PS4 is like at this point, there's not a lot of proprietary hardware. It's mostly just like AMD GPUs and CPUs and stuff. So why not?
And while I'm at it, but it's worth pointing out that like half the reason we're also interested in this Xbox conversation is Xbox like sales of the Xbox consoles have not exactly been through the roof over the last few years. Yeah, I mean,
they backed away from talking about sales like a year and a half ago to talk about engagement. I think their heavy discounting of it has done something to improve their sales, but I don't know off the top of my head. But yeah, like basically the Xbox One is a PC. It's a
Yeah.
PC in a box, and like the Scorpio is a more powerful, beefier PC in a box. And when you talk to them now, it's like, well, now we have the Xbox One family of devices, or the Xbox One continuum of devices, and all that basically means is, we have a family of PCs that come in boxes and you plug a controller into, and they have our OS running on them.
That's like it's like all it needs is Microsoft Office, and it's dangerously close to becoming like something you use for everything.
So, like, talking about this is something I've been noticing just as since I've been playing games for a whole bunch of time, and on console and PC. And somebody had mentioned earlier about the talk when we were making the transition into the current console generation about the chatter of our consoles, just gonna be going away like this generation, and I thought that, and meanwhile you have Steam machines coming up, and it's like, oh, like maybe like this is the way forward. And then, like PlayStation in particular came out, and even before PlayStation 4 came out and became, a success as far as consoles go, I had always thought like consoles will always have a place, proprietary hardware will always have a place if it can deliver on like not just like openness, but you also have to have a certain amount of power that could let that game developers will be able to play with, as well, like as a decent price. But most importantly, has always been convenience for consoles, and I think that the plug and play aspect, I think that is so important for consoles. For example, like with PC games, you have Steam Big Picture and everything like that. And I was playing. This is an anecdote. I was playing Nier Automata, and then I have to download a patch to get the mouse cursor to disappear from the middle of my screen when I'm using a gamepad. If Scorpio and if Xbox is going to focus squarely on convenience, plug and play aspect, but also bring in some more of the openness and encourage the creativity of game developers, then I think that's and have like a good price. It's clearly got the power too. Then it can do something. And like, I'll be honest, I was a little bit surprised about how much interest there is. Eurogamer site went down. We had people like tweeting at us a week before about Scorpio, like wondering, because somebody from Microsoft, Albert Pinello, said on NeoGAF that we'd be having stories coming up. So there's definitely a lot of interest in consoles. And does that surprise either of you guys? The continued, like this is a mid-cycle, incremental update, basically
Right.
like upping the specs.
Well, yeah, but it plays so well into that like ancient hoary tradition of whose box is better and whose box is more powerful. And when Scorpio
What
does
can your
have,
box do?
yeah, like Microsoft has been very tight-lipped about what games they're going to talk about this year at E3 and stuff, but certainly Scorpio has appears to be the most powerful home console when it comes out later this year. And there are people that get excited about that.
That's gonna get
or
clipped.
at the prospect of that.
I'm going to jump in because our there's a few people in chat sort of wondering why we keep looping back to PC. And I think the reason that the PC keeps coming up when you're talking about Xbox is two reasons. One, Microsoft has already begun double like releasing games that will come out on both on Xbox and PC. Like you buy one version of the game, you get two. You buy one version, you get two versions, and the developers working on those games are now presumably like trying to make sure like it's a pretty seamless experience. And the other reason is because come with that has been like Microsoft the company and Xbox the subgroup within the company, like they just keep dancing around the specter of trying to make Xbox do what things that PCs generally do, and Microsoft, the Windows 10 owner, is trying to sort of absorb things about Xbox into its operating system. I don't think you're ever going to be able to separate that because, and they're always going to have this dance of like, when does the line like stop blurring and finally like not exist? Because they keep bringing it up, and then they keep saying, no, it's not. These are two separate things. Like the Xbox it's like your old Nintendo. It's like it'll be under your TV. I think they're the ones like who are going to be sort of, for all that they try to make the Xbox Scorpio its own thing, the PC is going to be hanging over there like a shadow.
Yeah, and if it seems like we dance around PC often, it is because like a core. One of the reasons Scorpio matters most for game developers is because it is Microsoft getting on board with where developers already are, which is they are building for 4K. Like not everyone, obviously, but some developers who are out there who are building for PC first are already well accustomed to building games that can scale across different hardware configurations and building games that can scale up to 4K at 60 frames per second. And that is the pitch for Scorpio, which isn't even out yet. It comes out at the end of this year.
Yeah.
And so it's notable that like in many ways, Microsoft is trying to get the best of, like it is playing catch up with the PC. It is trying to take the best parts of the PC and bring them into Xbox without losing Xbox. That is why it matters.
It's kind of like when you're a Jedi and you like start using dark side powers, and like how close until you become a Sith. Sorry, that's a little too console war, but it just sounds so much like how far can you go, or you start adding robot parts to your human parts, and you're like, how far till you lose your humanity.
And like it is significant also because this is the first time in my memory, and I think in the history of the game industry, correct me if I'm wrong, where we have seen a significant mid-cycle console refresh and revamp from both Sony and Microsoft. And when Sony did it at the end of last year, it was there was a significant power increase in the Pro, but it was tricky. It was tricky for PS4 Pro owners to figure out which games would take advantage of their console. And I think it was tricky for developers to figure out what they could do to patch their old games or to get their new games running on PS4 Pro. And when we talked to Mark Cerny last year, he said we tried to make it as easy as possible for developers, and we're going to have conversations about making sure they support the PS4 Pro, but we're not going to require it. And that seemed like a very, friendly approach to developers, but it seemed like it kind of resulted in there being some months where PS4 Pro didn't seem to have a lot to because not a lot of games were supported.
Yeah.
And then they had to put in this boost mode to essentially do what Scorpio will do out of the box, right?
That's exactly right, and that's that is more for players than for developers. But that's notable because it means that Sony had to figure out a workaround for that, whereas Scorpio is basically just taking what PCs do and integrating it into a console environment. So now you just have a box with beefier bits and more memory, and that's just going to run everything better. And like I said, this is important for developers who are already building their games with dynamic scaling, dynamic resolution, that kind of stuff, because now they will be able to hit those higher marks on a console. So
everything that we're talking about kind of goes back to something we have talked about before previously. Is just is this idea of a mid-console refresh. It's going to be interesting how this plays out, because I see here in chat, I see it on Twitter, the responses to the Scorpio, they sound a lot like the responses to PlayStation 4 Pro. For example, Flipsider99 here in chat, the problem with Scorpio is that people won't buy games unless it has its own exclusive games, but it can't have exclusive games without splitting the Xbox user base. Yes, that is correct.
That's it.
And I don't know how you get around that. I mean, I haven't gone out and I haven't bought a PlayStation 4 Pro because there just isn't a good reason to do it yet. And it's like the Scorpio and the PlayStation 4 Pro in the market, they're aimed at kind of a niche of a niche.
Yeah, I mean, to be clear, the people that the Scorpio is aimed at are the people who would probably buy a PC instead.
Yeah,
which is what Andrew House at Sony was talking about with that you have been repeating for several months, Chris, which is that Sony saw not Microsoft as this giant competitor on Xbox, like they didn't see Xbox as their competitor, but PCs. They tried to make this mid-generation update to happen to keep their console user base from buying PCs and then just leaving the console cycle altogether as they just update through Steam. So Microsoft has not said that because they can't come out and say, hey, our parent company is our own competitor. But we seem to have looped back to the point that with like that to that same point that Andrew was making.
It's weird. I still like the more that we think about it. Like I like the idea of consoles doing the incremental updates, honestly, because like it's a very good point. It's the same reason like why a lot of developers like iOS, because there aren't 10 billion different pieces of hardware and screen sizes and whatever
Right.
to take into account.
Used to be.
And then yeah, I mean it's still not nearly as bad if you're developing iOS. It's like it's more standardized.
Yeah.
So that's a big reason why the consoles for me, like used to be like huge into PC games, and then now I'm just like I'm pushing 40 years old now. I don't have time. I've got kids. Like, do I really want to like spend my time, downloading these patches for really basic PC issues, or do I just want to flip on my Xbox or my PlayStation 4? And I really think that that's going to be key for console. So I like the idea what they're going for with like the more incremental updates. You're not splitting the user base. You're not splitting up the developer base. You're not resetting every generation. I think that's it's a good tack, but I just see a lot of people who are the target audience for these refreshes kind of taking a very like wait and see approach that isn't conducive to these things being like an instant success.
I don't. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I want to build off the only one thing, like the most positive outlook I see for both the Xbox Scorpio or Project Scorpio and the PS4 Pro is a future where people are buying when they buy a new console, say like they don't own a console at all, like they're making a new console purchase into this console generation, they start with the PS4 Pro, they start with the Scorpio, and over time enough Scorpios are in the market, and enough of these are in the market that the games can begin to update, like that old requirement, that min spec of the first console becomes it becomes like min specs on PC, which is like, yeah, you can run Mass Effect Andromeda on the min spec, but it's gonna look like a nice indie game running on your graphics card there, buddy.
What? That doesn't seem like a good thing at all.
No, it doesn't. It seems like the only future it doesn't seem like a good thing in the universal sense of it, but like I think what Microsoft and Sony are sort of sitting here like clenching their fists a little bit and hoping for is that by doing these mid-console generation updates, they can sort of seed all the future consoles sold to the point that then in the future they can revisit what developers have to make, like what benchmarks developers have to meet, because they're both saying so much right now, like we're not abandoning that first console. And but at some point they're going to, like, this is what we were talking about at E3 last year, is at some point like some transition has to be made, or the next console update will just be another non-backwards compatible console. And the thing is, I don't know how realistic that vision is. Maybe there's some data they have based on the fact that like X number of consoles by the end of the Xbox 360 cycle, they were selling the most powerful Xbox 360 that was on the market versus those first generation clunkers, and obviously the difference between those two wasn't staggering, but maybe they saw something there. That's the only future where I see this vision having the most flowering success. And then it would make sense to do yet another update, another mid-generation refresh, like the 2.75 to the 2.5, if you will, because enough people that the min spec is now the Scorpio, for instance. But that seems like such a long play, and such like they're hoping that some of these other benefits. We really need to talk about 4K because everyone in the chat has been talking about 4K for about 20 minutes. But that's what they're also kind of hoping, that people will make the jump because they want to support 4K. That to me is the only perfect vision of this. Otherwise, they're dancing around the problems that they're dancing around now until they just pull the gun on a new generation. pull the trigger.
You could be right. I could see that as a future. I don't
think it's a likely future. I just think
I don't know that I
that's
can
not
really
me gunning on
prognosticate like that.
That's not the
Like,
future I would predict, but I think it's the future that they're looking at with some like a dog would look at a treat.
So
I think
That might have been a little
sorry.
crass. Sorry.
Alex, you talked to Spencer a little bit about 4K, and he was making a bet on it, right? They had to think about this years ago.
Yeah.
What did he say about that?
He was very apologetic that they didn't get it at a hard console cut. Like, basically he was saying, like, we really, and you can read this to get the right words on the website, but like, we really appreciated when the changeover in TV displays from SD to HD happened, like right when the console switched.
Yeah.
That was great because we could just ride that and it just made sense. And we wanted that to happen with 4K, but we guessed that 4K would be like in the market, like enough people would have 4Ks to make it viable, 4K TVs to make it viable, sometime around the middle of this generation, is what he said. So that's why we decided to investigate a refresh. I want to go back to what, like, Brian, like 4K is the big talking point for Scorpio, and it was a big talking point for PS4 Pro.
And our chat has a lot of opinions about it, let me tell you.
Yeah, I guess we should talk about that because sure.
It's time to talk about 4K. Well, okay, so here's were you able to ask them all about the fact that, like, not many 4K monitors and TVs are like true 4K or whatever? It's not. I've been reading some like reviews about it, and there's a lot of not great 4K TVs out there. Like 4K. Because 4K is a large format resolution essentially.
Okay, yeah, that was not like
that didn't come up.
That was
no.
I did not ask them about, like, what is.
Well, why is your idea fundamentally flawed?
So I don't think it's fundamentally flawed. I think if you go shopping for a new TV now, like I have been recently, it is getting harder and harder to buy TVs that aren't 4K in some fashion. I don't know if that's like true 4K or ultra 4K. Microsoft loves to say things like Ultra HD. They're all about Ultra HD on 4K, and that's like a certain thing. But I think within a year or two, it will be very hard to buy something that's not 4K. So in that sense, I think it's probably on point. Like, I think they're probably right. Like, it's in my own like shopping habits, I have seen mostly 4K stuff. But like, I don't know. Well, I guess I don't know. Like,
is 4K going to be as like mandated a like standard to meet as 720p, for instance? Like 720p is still like the broadcast standard. It's like what if you can output to that, you're basically outputting to what most humans can perceive. Like, but 4K, and then everyone seems to be acting like 4K is going to be what every monitor can project to. When I think there's a lot of limitations on that. Especially the fact that since all things that project 4K also have to make, things that are shot in 720p and 1080p still look good. I think like that's where we're overlapping with the other things that monitors project. Videos and movies are still at these frame rates. Like, there's still the production process to get things out, everything out over there to look good in 4K isn't all the way there. Like, their sister content isn't rushing in at 4K at the same rate that game consoles are. So I think that, to me, that makes 4K not as universal a future as it just feels like right now. It just feels like 3D and like not as bad, not as unappealing as 3D could be, but it doesn't feel as guaranteed a future as say HD was, because a lot of other formats caught up with it very quickly, and 4K is right now just kind of like, we'll get there.
Well, eventually, like, yes, it's going to get there. It's going to be the standard eventually, and it's going to be like whatever 1000K eventually or whatever.
Yeah,
but,
Phil Spencer said 8K.
Oh, 8K? Does it stop at 8K?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's not really a question of if it's going to be standard. I mean, like you said, Alex, you can already see it. You go to Best Buy, like, they're all over the place and they're coming down in price. But is somebody going to go, like, I have a 1080p television. I have a 1080p projector that I play games on too. Am I going to go out and I'm just specifically going to buy an upgraded console that plays all the same games that are going to be on that console, so I could get the 4K stuff, as pretty as that might be, is no, people aren't. They're not going to do it. And the jump to like in chat here, Lars is noting how the jump from 1080 to 4K isn't going to be as recognizable as the jump to 1080.
Yeah.
It's just not. Even like 720 to 1080. It like 4K looks beautiful, but it's like the Scorpio, I think, is going to be coming out at kind of an awkward place in the generation of the switch, the transition between 1080 and 4K. Mm-hmm. So it's just like I said before, it's targeted to at a niche for better or for worse.
Alex,
that's exactly right.
Did you get to see anything? Did you get to see any gameplay footage? TF Khalid is specifically asking about the Forza Tech 4K demo, but did you get to see anything at 4K or anything running on Scorpio? I saw in your screenshots you saw something.
Yeah, well, I saw and played games while I was there. I'm trying to remember. There was something I saw that was later that I agreed to an embargo, and I'm trying to think how to discuss it. I saw.
Sorry,
I saw Forza running on Scorpio. That's what I saw, and I played it, and I was very bad at it because I'm really bad at Forza. So Forza Tech is running on Scorpio, and I think it probably won't get us in trouble to say that there will be more Forza games on Scorpio at some point in the future.
Yeah.
But come the embargo police.
Yeah. I think I personally am a little dismissive of 4K because I don't have a 4K TV. I've never seen HDR in person. People I trust say it's amazing. But I don't particularly have a lot of interest in discussing that or really buying one. And I think you're right, Chris, in that like a lot of people don't. It's going to be niche still for probably a little while. But Scorpio, they were very careful to be like, they kept saying 4K, but they were also like, as we got into it, like the whole point of it is performance. And so like, I don't think the chief selling point of Scorpio is necessarily 4K. Well, I guess the chief selling point is 4K. All right, fair enough. It's 4K. But like,
briefly, we should.
Yeah.
Briefly, just because you said HDR there, HDR is another separate technology. We need to they're also optimizing for HDR, right? Because I've seen some people saying it's more likely that HDR will sell new TVs before 4K will. If they're trying to find a monitor jump, it's possible that HDR may be the redeeming technological niche here.
Yeah, I'm speaking very vaguely because I don't want to say things like they're optimizing for HDR. Like I don't even know what that means. Like yes, Scorpio supports HDR, absolutely, and that is a chief selling point. But like I don't know if it's optimized in a way that any other thing that supports HDR isn't. But like that is their chief selling point, right? Like their goals, as you read in the article, was like 4K, 4K 60. Spatial audio, HDR, that kind of stuff. Those are like the goals of Scorpio. But what's important there is that like those aren't the mandates. For better and for worse, for developers, you are not required to do that, as far as I know. Like you can go read the articles for the details, but basically like if you don't do 4K on your game, it will still run better on Scorpio. And I'm pretty sure it will up-res to 4K, although don't quote me on that. And by the same token, I'm reasonably sure that when Scorpio comes out, if you are playing a game that can do 4K on a 1080p TV, you can have the console super sample it down so that the game will look a little bit better, even though you're not getting full 4K and you don't have HDR and everything. And that, I think, is the key selling point. Is like not that this is for 4K and like tied to 4K in any way, but like this will make all Xbox One games run better. Yeah. That was what they wanted to get across. And the problem there is that like because it's an Xbox One device, developers who are building for it, while they can target 4K 60, they still have to have games that run well on Xbox One.
Yeah.
And that means they still have to deal with things like the ES RAM, which like on Scorpio doesn't have any ES RAM. It's just like 12 gigs of, I think, DDR5. So like by widening the continuum of Xbox One as a family, they are yoking the front edge to the back, right? Like the caboose is dragging up this whole train. And that will affect the way developers build for the platform going forward.
So it's interesting because we just got done talking about whether or not or like what the market looks like for the Scorpio, but like it does seem like, to Microsoft's credit, they're doing the best job they can with the Xbox Series that they could, given the circumstances.
Right.
Like what you were just describing, it's kind of like they're the ones who are fronting the risk. They're the ones who are responsible for the messaging for the market. As for game developers who want to develop on Xbox, the pitch that you really highlighted in your article was like, you can develop for the Scorpio in the same way as you do with Xbox One, and I think that's very important that they took that tack.
With 10 minutes left in our conversation about Project Scorpio, which I'm just going to highlight something that Alex showed to me while he was prepping this article, is that the symbol for Scorpio is a giant M. If you want to know why, you're like thinking here saying like, what's this console got to do with scorpions? It's
an M.
It's a freaking
a giant. And when I saw Spencer,
joke.
he had a shirt. He had a black shirt on with a shiny black M on it, and I didn't know. I was thinking about it, I didn't pay it. And then weeks later, I was like, oh god, it was the symbol for Scorpio.
Right. So this is 10 minutes left, and I think I'm going to share a thought and then ask a question. I think a thought, and that this thought may have been stolen from Chris or someone who said it in Slack, is that Microsoft seems to be making a big push to talk about the tech now in April so that they can talk about a games library in June at E3 or in another press conference. Because the last time they did this, they were like that Simpsons clip where what's-his-face is just stepping on all the rakes. Because right after their press conference where they tried to wrap their games and their platform all in one, it was just like a never-ending parade of walkbacks. And this time they seem to be... Let's talk about the tech first, and then let's talk about the games. But we need to talk about the games briefly because, as many have pointed out, the Xbox as a platform for the only place to play X game is not like the hottest argument around right now. And I feel like this is weird because I feel like when I'm talking about this, I'm talking about this from the game player's perspective, not the game developer's perspective. But there is a genuine question, like, why would you go exclusive on Xbox when so far it seems that Sony has provided a better deal for developers to go exclusive on their platform? I'm playing Horizon Zero Dawn right now, and this game is like, it's kind of like, we've talked about the weaknesses of the PS4 Pro, but it would not be an inconceivable sell for Sony to walk up and say, buy the PS4 Pro, play Horizon Zero Dawn, the game that is only on this console, at the most beautiful resolution ever. And Microsoft is sitting here saying, play Halo.
It's not. So we have to be really careful here because, first of all, we have known for a long time that they would talk about the games at E3. So we don't know anything about that. And the part of this hype cycle that we were drawn into, is just about the technology, right, and developers. Right. And the argument to developers they're making is not go exclusive on Xbox.
I know that they're not saying go exclusive, but they're still saying, we'll continue. Sorry.
Right. So what they're saying is like, we want more developers on our platform.
Right.
This is a outreach to developers because they need more games on their platform and you can make this jump here that I think you're trying to make, is that they don't have a lot of strong games on the platform as it is. Right. And they don't have a lot of strong first party things that have really resonated with an audience in the last 3 years.
Right. So what are they banking on though? Because Sony, I can't think of a lot of developers who have completely ignored the Xbox at the expense of Sony and Steam. Is it that large? Am I wrong? Are there that many games that you can buy them on PS4 and you can buy them on Steam, but you can't buy them on Xbox? I mean, Rocket League launched on Steam, but now it's made its way to Xbox, or it launched on PS4, but it made its way to Xbox, for instance. Like, they seem to be getting there. They just aren't launching there first. Is that what they're trying to correct?
I think they just want more games on their platform and they want to widen the net. So I think, having a beefier console is one way to do that. Having a better dev kit is one way to do that. Also things like their preview program for games, like Arc and stuff. That was a significant move towards that. That's to steal a bit of the thunder from Steam Early Access and get it onto Xbox. Yeah. Game Pass is that in a way because they're trying to say well, even if you don't want to buy a new Xbox game every month or whatever, what if we just gave you access to all our old games that you love, like Xbox 360 games? Just like back compat is that. It's all just in the absence of like a killer first party 2017 lineup, 2016 lineup, they are trying to just get all the other things lined up so that you have more reasons to buy an Xbox.
Right.
Yeah, it's also they can really like what we were what Bryant, I think what you were starting to talk about that could have really led us down this rabbit hole was trying to break down why Xbox One is behind PlayStation 4 like in the console. I mean like there's a few reasons that I think that Xbox One is trailing against its competitor. With the Scorpio, you can see it happening now, even talking to us and getting the Digital Foundry and getting the more hardcore people fired up and the game developers fired up, they can really leverage the Scorpio release as a soft relaunch of the Xbox brand. You see people talking about what I'm seeing most is people asking about games. And I would hope that Microsoft has something significant to show game-wise that would push somebody to be like, okay, I need a Scorpio now, or I need to buy a Scorpio and a 4K TV. It's not going to be an exclusive game, So there has to be some kind of real reason, and it has to be a game, or some games. Because it's a cliche to say, but that's all that I see people saying, like consumers saying on Twitter or in chat here. What about the games? Where are the games? And it's hard to,
I will say they do still have the exclusive on that. This is not going to be like a knockout blow for the Scorpio. They do still have an exclusive on games like that pirate game from Rare, right? I'm blanking.
Sea of Thieves.
Sea of Thieves, yeah.
Yeah.
So
I think I'm going to get that on Windows though.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah,
but it does look awesome.
They are in the weird box for almost any exclusive they want to guarantee for Xbox, be it Xbox One or Xbox Scorpio. They are running out of reasons that it would not also have that Windows 10 like dual feature in some way. So that may be a great feature for people like us, because now they gave me a copy. I was able to get a copy of Halo Wars and play around with that. And I was and I could play it on whichever one I wanted. That was enjoyable to me, but that may be strangely a harder argument for people who keep saying where are the games. They're going to keep getting an answer that includes on Windows.
Yeah, we're
leaving
this
the
is
Scorpio
like a whole other
discussion.
Conversation that'll take like an hour. I think worrying too much about I guess I'll just close it like the way I closed the article, which is they didn't talk about games. They don't have any notable games that we know of that are like big system sellers. But also what are the big games right now?
Yeah.
Horizon did well, but Minecraft is still huge, and Zelda seems to have taken the industry by storm, and neither one of those games need a beefy PC to run them.
Right.
You don't need a beefy console to run them. So I think. I think Scorpio is not necessarily the place where you are going to get all the this is going to change their game strategy, and now all of a sudden they're going to have the power to really just blow the doors down, and that's just games factor into this in an ecosystem way. This is not going to bring fantastic new games to their first party hardware. It's going to allow them to tap better into an establishing ecosystem of games and developers.
It almost seems like those high power like we're sitting here talking. I made the Horizon comparison, but you're absolutely right to bring up Zelda. It's going to be they have a console that they want to sort of make as loud and bold with games that push the console's processing power to the max. But it's absolutely true that in this hypothetical world, because I brought up so many hypotheticals today, it could be games that that don't push all that power to the max, that don't require all that power, that people still find at home on Xbox, and hopefully Microsoft understands that to some extent. As a brief nod, everyone's talking about Scalebound and the cancellation of Scalebound being a hefty blow, because it was people were excited for a Platinum Games experience with apparently I guess the other selling point was this beautiful looking Platinum Games game that was just on Xbox.
No, the selling point was the dragon.
Oh, the dragon.
If you read our
yeah.
interview with Kamiya from like 2 years ago at Gamescom, he was just like in love with a dragon. He wanted to make a game for you where you knew what it was like to be best friends with a dragon and hang out with a dragon. So like really,
Yeah, but
that was the great loss.
hanging out with a dragon sounded 10 times more awesome for like why I should buy a console than like it has 4K. Same way as Zelda is like explore a beautiful world. Minecraft is do all the things you do in Minecraft. I don't know how to put that in a talking point.
Okay. Yeah. so let's like we're at the closing time, but let's put in some closing thoughts in about 20 seconds each.
Yeah.
How about what do you think, Bryant? What's your takeaway here?
For developers, I am still not entirely in because I don't completely have a developer's brain that I could be wrong. I'm not entirely convinced myself still that some knockout argument has been made for why you should be on Xbox beyond any reason that you've already had to be on Xbox. I still don't. Scorpio, I've read a lot of great things about Scorpio and Phil Spencer's mentality in this interview, and I still haven't heard I mean, like, Alex, you've done a lot of great job saying they're trying to build this increased net for developers. I still don't process any reason beyond what we've already heard, and I don't and I know Phil Spencer has like shied away from it in the conversations. I still envision a future where Xbox metamorphosizes in what Xbox is in order to sort of keep its presence in the market existent. I have not yet heard what will make like this thing just being like this set of boxes that only do Xbox coming out. I think there's a future. I think a further distinction will be necessary in order so that you have 3 things that are different as opposed to 2 things that are the same and 1 is different in the console market. Just to throw the switch in there. That's my over 20-second thought. Sorry.
Okay, it's all right. So I'll go. So I think that incremental mid-console refreshes are kind of the only option that you can go aside from just letting your console hardware just age gracefully. So it's just kind of hard. Like just the console business as a whole has painted itself into a corner here, and this seems like one of the only solutions outside of just going full on Nintendo and just releasing something radically different and just taking a chance on making something wholly unique. Then yeah, and one more thought, like Bryant, you had just mentioned, getting getting developers on board with Scorpio. I think that Microsoft has actually taken a really good tack in that regard, in that if you're an Xbox One developer, you're already a Scorpio developer in a lot of sense. And I think it's that that shows like that that Microsoft is on they're on point. They're talking to game developers, and I think that there is important. And I like consoles, so I hope they don't die. I don't think they will, like necessarily anytime soon. But the convenience that consoles provide, trust me, all you young kids out there, you're not going to want to have to mess with all this goofy stuff at some point in your life. All right,
yeah,
Alex.
Totally.
Alex, you the master reporter. Tell us what you think.
Yeah, right. I think it's obvious. Like Microsoft is humbled from where it was when the Xbox One was announced at E3 years ago. You can see that in the way they are like really rolling out the carpet for Scorpio, like trying to drip out everything they can and get everyone excited about everything from the specs to the developer situation to eventually the games. And also in the way they talk about their competitors and the PC. Like Spencer's very friendly about Sony and Nintendo. He's very excited about them. And he's very open to talking about where the PC is strong and what Xbox can gain from that. And that hasn't always been the case. Like it's been a long, weird road for Microsoft, which has been so dominant on Windows and yet has seemingly just dropped the ball time and time and time again in terms of games on Windows. And it now finally seems in 2016, 2017 that that's turning around. And I think you're going to see that continue. And the Scorpio is basically an extension of that under your TV. Like in a weird way, we may soon be thinking about Xboxes as, set-top boxes for PC games rather than PC as a place where your Xbox game goes. But yeah, I don't know. Like it seems like Microsoft is finally taking some useful learnings from the PC and treating the PC as a competitor just like Sony is, and that's probably wise. So,
All right. Well, thank you all for joining us today. We appreciate the feedback we've seen in chat. We appreciate you all. If we would also love it if you could, if you enjoyed talking with us about the future of Xbox, and if you enjoyed our reporting and you found it useful to you, we'd appreciate it if you would scroll down and click follow, so that you can get more notifications about what we're doing here on Twitch. And of course, you can read more of Alex's reporting on Gamasutra.com. Whoa! Someone check your mic. Getting some buzz here. And before we go, I'm going to pitch our next stream, which is not tomorrow. Guess what, everyone? We're going to be back in an hour to talk with some developers about Persona 5. So if you like Persona 5, you want to share your thoughts about Persona 5, join us then. Otherwise, we will see you hopefully tomorrow when we're going to be playing The Signal from Tolva with the developer of that game. So, bye everyone.
bye.